Emotionally, you might combust to help because intellectually, you're seeing that one is stronger than the other. So you know, or you think, or you understand that one is stronger than the other. So emotionally, the next step, boom, you go and you want to help. Even if you don't help, you might want to help emotionally. But if those are a match and they look like they're equal to each other, you might just watch. There might not be any emotion. The next emotion could be fear. The next emotion could be something else. So the emotion is fueled by the intellect, what you know concerning fear, spirituality, what you see going on around you. People fear. Fear is an emotion. People fear because they don't understand a lot of times. People fear because they don't think that something is a certain way, because they don't understand it, because they don't know the truth. That's why it's good to digest the truth. The information and experience gathered through the five senses and digested by the intellect feed and ignites reactions within the emotional chamber. These reactions or emotions then spark a chemical change within the body that turns on a man for action, or a woman, to flee, to fight, to cry, to rejoice, to love, to fear, to hurt, to pain, whatever the emotion is. So intense are the physiological changes that accompany the emotions that the ancients identified the seat of the emotions in the belly and the loins. That's Eastern society, Western society. The emotions are identified as the seat of the belly and the loins. The center of your body is the belly. Therefore, it's the strongest part that holds that. And your heart is right there. And it causes you to react. A man controls his emotion. A woman controls her emotion by steering your intellect. Like I said, you see those two fighting. The first thing you think is this fair? Is this right? Is he better than him? Is she better than her? What's going on? What do I need to know, think, and understand in order to react? So you control your emotions by steering your intellect. If you don't know the truth, if you don't care, if you don't know what's right, if you are not sure, then anything can happen. Like I said, there's a lot of spiritual activity going on around. So, the emotional chamber is the combustion chamber. We've gone through the intellect, which is the digestive chamber. Then we have the emotions, which is the combustion chamber. Next is the conscience. The conscience is the judicial chamber. With your conscience, you are your own judge. You make the decision on what's right and wrong with your conscience. But if your intellect doesn't know what's right and wrong, doesn't know the truth about what's right and wrong, then your conscience could make the wrong decision. The conscience is an apparatus that sits in judgment over a man's actions. It is for this reason described as the judicial chamber of the heart. As the judge of a man's moral condition, it is consistently on watch, delivering its verdict on past, present, and even future actions. It commends or condemns past actions, accuses or excuses present conduct, and approves or disapproves contemplated activities. The conscience is properly a judicial and not a legislative chamber. The conscience does not make laws. Legislation makes laws. The conscience does not make laws. It only enforces them. The conscience must be informed properly of right and wrong, truth and falsehood, good and evil, sin and righteousness, or vice and virtue. The conscience is good at judging and policing actions, but it is only as dependable as the standard has been taught, which goes back to your intellect. The conscience is quite vulnerable in three sorts of injuries. So you can injure your conscience. These are the three ways. An uneducated or misinformed conscience, like an ignorant jury or a sleeping dog, will let the trespasser go free. If regularly disregarded and stepped on, like feet that are uncovered by shoes, the conscience grows callous after its blisters heal. So if you're walking miles and miles and you don't have any shoes on, eventually you get blisters, then the blisters bust, and then they go into callus, and then you have elephant feet. And it doesn't matter anymore because you've already gotten rid of the pain. So now you are what I like to call seared, or the other word, oh God. Anyway, we'll continue. An uneducated or misinformed conscience is like an ignorant jury. If a jury does not have all of the information, all of the evidence needed, then it can't bring a good verdict. So when you're not completely informed, when your intellect has not been digesting enough truth, then your conscience could possibly be vulnerable to injury. If truth is the friend of the conscience, then a lie would be its worst enemy. Just like a false witness is an enemy in court. If you have someone on the stand and they're not telling the truth, but they're on the stand and they're expected to tell the truth, that wouldn't be a good thing. That's not good. For this reason, the conscience of liars and hypocrites are said to be seared. Like I said, they're said to be callous. They really don't care. They tell a lie with a straight face because their conscience has already been deadened. So that can make you vulnerable. That can make your conscience vulnerable as well. So the three were misinformed. If you're misinformed, if you don't know the truth, then your conscience could be injured. If you disregard the truth, your conscience could be injured. If you're uneducated with the truth or misinformed, your conscience could be injured. So let's continue. The last chamber is the will, which is the executive chamber. So we've gone over the first chamber, which is the intellect. It is the digestive chamber. The second chamber is the emotions. It is the combustion chamber. And the third chamber is the conscience, which is the judicial chamber, Last, we have the will, which is the executive chamber of the moral heart. Man is given power of choice, and the will is the seat of that faculty, meaning the will can override the other three chambers.